Hello everyone and welcome to our latest episode of Future Work World podcast. My name is Barry Winkless. I'm Chief Strategy Officer at Cpl and Head at the Future Work Institute.
And I'm Elysia, Hegarty, Associate Director at the Future of Work Institute.
And throughout the show we'll discuss a range of topics from the A to Z of talent and the world of work.
And we'll interview experts to inspire you to make changes to improve work and life.
So Elysia, what mad trends do we have to talk about today around the world?
Mad trends. Today we're talking about upskilling and reskilling. So rapid technological advancements mean that employees and candidates will need to continuously update their skills to remain relevant. Likewise, organisations that are investing in upskilling and reskilling programs are becoming more and more attractive to candidates as it's really strong for their value proposition. I think the pandemic, along with tech advancements and innovation, have really accelerated the need for this. A McKinsey report states that 80% of employers said that they're planning to accelerate automation and digitalization in response to the pandemic. So this is further driving the demand for relevant skills. And I know as well with the European Union, skills agenda is aiming really to improve the quality and relevance of this skills development. And there are already a lot of organizations who are moving a lot of this forward, not just tech roles or tech sectors, but all individuals across all areas. And I really believe that, candidates are going to really need, the candidates who invest in their own upskilling and reskilling are really going to be the ones that are in demand.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I mean, if we look at some of what we're seeing on the Future Work Institute, so we're seeing this rise of skills-based organizations, so moving away from narrowly defined roles to a much more skills focus. And I know we're doing a bit of work in that space. But here's a question for you, Elysia.
Ooh.
Right. How many skills do you learn from learning the guitar?
Wow. Off the top of my head, maybe 10?
Not bad. So
Close.
4 types of skills I'm going to say, right? So physical skills is pretty obvious, right? Hand-eye coordination, dexterity. And interesting enough on the physical side, things like motor, skills, right? Being able to utilize your fingers and getting better coordination, so that becomes really important in things like manufacturing. But I think what's really interesting are things like cognitive skills, right? So, learning an instrument, playing an instrument helps improve your memory and concentration. It really enables you to have better problem-solving skills. And obviously creativity is one of those, but there's emotional skills, right? So self-expression, stress relief, confidence, and then social skills. All musicians need to collaborate, work with others, communicate with others, and you also have to perform ultimately, right? So if you think about that, right, that's really about 13, 14 skills you learn just from learning guitar. And this brings me back right into the skills discussion, which is, I love the idea of quests, right? And I know there's so many interesting schools in the US called quest schools that focus on this area, but this idea of, learning the guitar as a quest, and you learn a huge amount of skills through that quest. I think we need to maybe start thinking about skills the other way around. And, think about your own world, Elysia, and some of the things that you're interested in. How many skills do you learn from some of the crafts that you do? I know it's something we're going to talk to Patrick about later on as part of the interview. So again, I think we need to maybe start thinking about skills slightly differently. And even when we talk about skills-based organizations, for what purpose? What quests are we trying to fill for those organizations? So
exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah, an interesting one. And I think it'll be different for each organisation and equally each individual. And how they learn as well is equally important. I know in our last episode we talked about neurodiversity and all of those kind of things. So I think an experiential learning and all of that. So I think it's very important to take into consideration not just what we're learning, but as you say, the why and the how. Yeah,
I think we covered that as a further episode.
Yeah.
So there you go, guys. The other piece we need to talk about for the future work is upskilling, reskilling, and the skills-based organisation. Thanks, Elysia.
Thank you.
And now we move on to our interview section, and today Elysia and I are delighted to be speaking with Patrick Kabanda, author of The Creative Wealth of Nations. Patrick is a Juilliard-trained organist and a Fletcher-trained international affairs professional. His first book, The Creative Wealth of Nations, was published in 2018. He's taught at Phillips Academy and consulted for the World Bank and the United Nations Development Programme. In 2013, he was awarded the Presidential Award for Citizenship and Public Service from Tufts University, Massachusetts. Welcome, Patrick. Great to see you.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to join both of you, and I am delighted to be here speaking with you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Patrick, maybe for our listeners, you might start off with maybe giving them an overview of what the central thesis of your book, The Creative Wealth of Nations, is about.
Yes. What I try to argue in the book is that if nations can fully engage their creative wealth, they are more likely to reap major monetary and non-monetary benefits. And that's very important because we tend to think of the arts or just economic growth in the monetary dimension. Yet also the non-monetary dimension is very important. And that's why many times the arts are dismissed or called a luxury, because we focus so much on that economic output, which we have not really yet managed to measure well. Maybe AI will help us, but I think we haven't really understood how the arts seriously contribute to non-monetary benefits. And as we are going to talk later, you can see there's a kind of loop that even the non-monetary benefits indeed can support monetary benefits, and they can go together. And that's why I argue that the arts are not a luxury. They are really central to the task of development, to the ideals and the practicality of development.
Yeah, really interesting, Patrick. Well, Patrick, the big thing for me really in the book was that linking art, economy and development as a critical factors in the mitigation of things like violence and exclusion, which to me was a really amazing concept. I love the example of the Afro reggae movement that you gave within the book, and some of the stuff around the Afghanistan National Institute of Music and the impact that those kind of things have. I'm really interested in, those examples, and how they manage to mitigate situations, so can you tell us a bit more about those and other examples that you might have?
Yes, and indeed this, I think, in my view, connects to especially the non-monetary dimension, where the arts are able to bring us together. For example, these kids in the favelas in, I think, Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, most of them have been really caught in the middle of violence, drug trafficking and things like that, and police brutality. In fact, I think that group was started to try to counter police brutality. So once you get, I think, some people, young kids, to be involved in something else, which can connect them to themselves and to the society, which is not drug trafficking, then you are more likely to bring them in, okay? And that's very, very important, because if all they see is drug kingpins and things like that, it's not helpful. And I think that you have to have alternative ways of how to get young people going. I know, I didn't grow up in Brazil, but I can vividly see how music helped me to stay the course, okay? Going to choir practice, having friends, big role models. I even started to be interested in other composers, and you read about them, and you're writing Achina Achebe. I saw that there's another section of life which is connected with these powerful individuals or powerful ideas of creativity, which have nothing to do with like drug trafficking, yet you can actually get kind of the same high or benefits of some sort. So I believe that's one way to go. But also, if you look in Afghanistan, I think is one of our areas you also had mentioned. When the National Institute of Music was created, it was to try to see how to bridge all these differences, because Afghanistan is also in a very, very tough spot. We have seen what has happened recently with the Taliban taking over. Women cannot go to school and things like that. There's a lot of strict kind of codes. And those kinds of things are always often misleading. But this school was one place where people could come from different backgrounds. Muslims, non-Muslims, Christians, non-Christians, people from all walks can come to play music. And not only Western music, but they can also play Afghan music. In fact, they have some of the most extraordinary instruments out there. We don't know much about them because it's not something we talk about, but it's really a way to show how we can all come together and create something which connects to the human spirit in an inclusive way. So that's why I think this is quite very important. And you are going to see the same issues here, even in the United States. There have been movements to try to reach inner city kids and other kinds of kids to try to see how can we connect all these young people to creativity. And that's why I don't believe in the entire idea of that music or arts classes are luxury and should be expensive, because it's another way we can draw in all sorts of people from different cultures. And lastly, on this point, I have friends from all over the world. and I have mentioned this before, I don't have these friends or even meeting because I'm a nice guy. Normally, the reason why we are is because maybe if you are from Ireland, I like your music from your country. Some friends from Germany. What brings us together, because I love Bach, and some of them love African chant and African drumming, or they want to come see our sort of cultural monuments. So we typically from Japan to Thailand, Korea, Panama, Colombia, England, France, you name it, all the friends, Egypt, these friends I have, even Nigeria, it tends to be connected with music and cultural things. and I think that's important.
Yeah. It's funny, Patrick. I know 5 organists because I love music myself. I never spoke to an organist who doesn't love Bach. So there you go, because I think he wrote most of the great pieces on for the organ. I'm really interested as well, Patrick, in some of the things you're talking about there, because for me, a musician myself, maybe not at the level of what you've gone through, but the ability for music to cut through any type of perceived barrier and to cut through any type of struggle around communication. But I'm a guitarist by trade, and I'm always fascinated at how many people I've got to know and got to understand just through the exchange of ideas around music, and even just playing together. And I've had the good fortune of playing with various different people on the guitar from various parts of the world, and I totally agree. I think there's a real high, and I love that idea of the human spirit that you talk about as well, that it creates. So it definitely resonates on my side.
Yeah, and I think a couple of things as well that resonated with me as you were talking, and from the book. I went to see the Bob Marley movie recently. I don't know if anyone have you gone to see that yet? But it focuses on the concerts that he had in order, to bring the two parties together. And again, how he used music to kind of, as in terms of his activism. Also, I think I was reflecting then on Ireland and our traditional music, and how that really kind of highlights, and a lot of our traditional music is about our fight for freedom. And
or losing someone,
or people emigrating away from the country. But also you think about people like Sinead O'Connor, who would have used the music for activism and getting people together. So I think there's a lot, as you mentioned there, that resonated, that we could apply to ourselves. So I think it's very applicable.
Patrick, I want to talk about, you talk a little bit about the arts and this idea of commercial development. And, obviously we can talk about the arts as a enabler of the human spirit, etc. But I'm interested in that connection. How does arts drive commercial development? Have you any examples there that you can talk a little about, either at a country level or even at an organizational level, in terms of that connection?
Yes, one of the things I had mentioned in the book, which actually, because the book started out as, came out from my thesis from the Fletcher School, and the thesis I wrote there was titled, Where Culture Leads, Trade Follows. And that's where I want to come in. And since we've been talking about Bob Marley and reggae, Afro reggae, I should mention that one time I went to play an organ concert on Åland Islands in the middle of the Baltic Sea. This was in 2009, I believe. And I had to go through Sweden and then, of course, go to the islands, and also I was able to see Finland. But I think it was in Stockholm. I could not believe I seeing all these items being sold about Bob Marley. I think hearts. I'm like in Sweden, man. Of course, I think this is very interesting, but that's an idea of all things from Jamaica. I think Bob Marley, for some reason, all over the world is celebrated. And that's a commercial, because these people were trying to make a buck, and they're actually not Africans, as I can tell, or they are not from Jamaica. They're actually, I think, Swedish people. If I remember correctly, it's been a long time. But that's an entry point of where I want to go. For example, if that t-shirt helps me understand who Bob Marley was, maybe then I want to buy a plane ticket to go to Jamaica. Okay, you see, and when I go there, I just don't, you could stay in a tent, but still you have to eat food. You have to maybe rent a bike or get a driver or find a translator. And you can see how by the time you get on the plane, the economic activity has started to happen. Yet it would have been instigated by you being in Stockholm and seeing this t-shirt of this person, ask questions like, this is very interesting, I want to go to this place. Okay, That's, I think, a very interesting area of how culture leads and trade follows. And then I think "O Danny Boy" is an Irish tune. Okay, is that correct? The tune "O Danny Boy," is it? Yeah. So I think I mentioned in the book that I used to be a cocktail pianist, and whenever guests will come, they will ask me for, could you play some tunes? And "Oh, Danny Boy" was one of very interesting tunes. And when I play them, they will come often and they'll buy a drink and they'll buy a meal just because they want to hear the pianist play Danny Boy. And sometimes they'll be so happy, they either will leave me a tip or they will buy me also drinks or buy me food or whatever it is. But you see how the hotel is starting to make quite a lot more money because of that. Or even they could have options to go to another hotel, but just because they have a pianist who plays their favorite pieces of music, and when they go, they just don't come to listen to music. You see, there are all sorts of other activities going on. So that's another example. But more immediately, as people have noticed, music is used to sell phones. Music is used to market products, even sometimes to a very, very extreme example. And meanwhile, artists themselves are starving, but it has never meant that, that the music doesn't have the economic activity going on. So recently, I think are you in Dublin? Yeah, so someone from South Africa was coming there for a mental health conference, I think. And they somehow found my book in a library in Dublin. And before you know it, they contact me and they say, this is a very interesting book. I didn't just write about mental health. I wrote about, it's not the biggest part in the book. But because she was interested in that part, she read the entire book. And before you know, she's inviting me on Zoom. She wants me to see how we can collaborate, go to South Africa. And maybe she's from South Africa. And then maybe see how I can maybe be involved in some research in brain and the arts, and then see how I can be part of a team. And you can see now, what if I end up buying a plane ticket going to South Africa, or they are inviting me? So you see, all these things started out from, and they are not free. Just because someone, I've been to South Africa, I love it before, but can you just believe it as from a random, someone just putting a book, I didn't make money from the book itself. It's not like you make money from books. It's not that easy or common, but you can see how it leads to many, many other. And definitely writing a book, especially about culture, is a creative endeavor. So these are some of the simplest examples. But also, I think one thing I should mention here is imagination. We talk a lot, even in your work. I don't think there's an organization who doesn't talk about innovation and creativity. But what we feel, where do these things come from? I don't know if you both have children, and maybe this is not appropriate, but maybe funny, but it's like saying, oh, you love children and you are raising children, but you don't know how children are made. So basically the entire idea is that, creativity and innovation are great, but what's that mix? There's a reason why the arts and culture are always at the center of creativity and innovation.
Patrick, I'm interested in your thoughts on how you believe the arts can make organizations more inclusive and enable a much richer experience. So how can it drive greater social cohesion at an organization level?
Yes, and I think I should, let me use this moment to bring about this caveat, which you may also already have encountered. Whenever you talk about these issues, music can bring people together, things like that. People are like, oh, no, music can divide people. In fact, talking of the Taliban, I don't think they want to hear any other kind of music except their own Islamic kind of, whatever traditional music they want, their kind of type of music, because they believe this other kind of music is corrupted. And indeed, the arts can divide people. But I've always been quick to point out that, anything which has power can divide people. Politics can be used for public good, but you can see most of the time it's not really. Things don't go in one good way like that. Research itself can be used right now. I'm not saying this is the same, it reaches the same kind of level of the way things work, but social media, the internet, all the things were supposed to be great. Many of us were on the bandwagon of how, but it's, it can also be used for a lot of destructive things. So you have to be careful about that. But as I mentioned to somebody before, that economics itself is abused. I mean, the arts can be abused. People can use knowledge, they can abuse it. So the arts should not always bear the burden of being, oh, they are not all great because they can divide people. Yes, they have a lot of emotional kind of ways they can reach people, but if used in a good way, they are a wonderful way to reach people. It's almost like even religion. There are things which are always can be susceptible to really, really terrible abuse. But on the positive side, the arts are wonderful. So bringing organizations together, I believe like if you can, even the arts can bring countries together, people from different cultures together. Indeed, organizations, especially those which are saying they want to be inclusive or whatever, work together. The arts are great about that. Part of it because music can help us bond. Okay, even if you are not from Uganda or Brazil, you can appreciate Ugandan music or Brazilian music. I'm not from Germany. I don't have any connection to Bach's. But music, it's almost like there's a family of us all over the world who are just Bach fans. And that's just basically because of music. So in an organization, if you can find a way where you can work with people from different cultures, what's your central way of get to work together? What's that ingredient? I think the arts are wonderful for that, if they are not used just for a show. And then, of course, collaboration. If you work in the arts, you probably know many artists themselves are not sometimes the easiest people to be around. And that's, I think we all can agree for the most part. There are some who are great, but sometimes it's not easy. But what I know, and I actually tried to write something about this in graduate school, where if we are going to play a certain kind of music, which quartet or whatever, trio or whatever, a form of music which demands us to work together. Music often will dictate. I can't play against you. So if you are going to play the guitar, and I'm going to be on the piano, and Elysia maybe will be on the violin or whatever she's doing, or singing also. I can't just play my part and you play your part. We somehow, even if we may not get along together, even if our accents may be different, we have to find a way to work together. Isn't that what organizations are looking for? So basically, how can we find, with all our differences, the product takes precedence. At least that's what I know. Even on the organ, if I'm going to be playing the organ by myself and I'm playing a fugue, I have to sometimes balance things. So if I'm trying to play solo, what should be louder? What should be accompanied? What should come out? And this is basically a way to make things work out nicely, so that you have this kind of connection. So I believe that the arts are very good about that. But also, if organizations are trying to look at innovation and stuff, first of all, innovation starts with observation. We have to observe a lot and I think looking at merging different kinds of things. The arts also can be wonderful because, as you know, many artists experiment a lot. Like, oh, maybe let me look at it this way. Let me look at this way. Or maybe what did you say here? And also, many of us don't have this trait, but we have to listen to each other a lot. Right? But many times we are quick to have our own repertoire answers. We are quick to really jump into something without taking a moment to say, what exactly are you saying? So, but if you want to record your guitar very well and tune yourself, sometimes you have to listen. What's the balance going on? What is it that I want to achieve in these kinds of things? So, if you're accompanying a friend, in fact, in many parts, I think there's a course called collaborative piano where someone is trained as an accompanist, I believe, but it's a specialization of instruments, but they have to actually also be aware of what the singer who they are accompanying, what are they doing? And anyone accompanying somebody, well, it's not just your part. Listen to what the other person is doing. Well, how can we then work together? You may have differences. You may be Muslim, I may be Christian, I may be a non-believer, I may be Jewish, but somehow there's a central thing which brings us together. I think that's where organizations can learn from.
There's a couple of things you mentioned there that kind of resonated to me as you were speaking. One is finding that common ground, but then also I think there's having an appreciation as well for different cultures and different things. There's a really cool band that my husband listens to, actually. They're from Scandinavia, and I've no idea what they're saying or what they're singing about, but the music is beautiful, the language is beautiful, and you can actually hear and feel the emotion in the music. So I'll be singing along in whatever language it is, have no idea what they're saying, but it's phenomenal. And I think it's really, I think what you're saying there as well is, and this resonates, I think, in the workplace as well, is just having an appreciation for the unknown, and I think that's really important as well.
Yes. Yeah.
One of the other things as well, I know obviously we've spoken a lot about music, and I know Barry loves to play his guitar in his spare time, and I think it's it's fantastic way to kind of switch off. Personally, I love arts and crafts. I've spent an awful lot of time personally drawing, painting, doing variety of different crafts. My idea of supporting my mental health is doing some sort of craft or design, and I'm interested, I guess, in how the arts can help in improving mental health. Can you maybe talk about examples that maybe make it real for our listeners as well?
Yes, indeed. A colleague recently pointed out to me that, okay, you are talking about working together, but sometimes some artists, like painters, have to be a room by themselves. So how can that work? But I think I thought about it a lot, because I never really put a lot of emphasis on that kind of thing. But when I thought of it, I thought maybe observation, because some painters who observe nature or whatever it is, or they are painting a portrait, you have to look and see where does this done. That sometimes forces you to seek out things which an ordinary looker will just basically don't look at. But in terms of mental health, I used to also draw a little bit. I don't anymore, but all I know, whenever I would draw something, I would concentrate so much. There would be this almost calm silence for me to get, and you feel like the brain is almost getting a break or being watered, just because I am trying to paint something. Now, there's a painter I mentioned in my book who went to northern Uganda. As you may have known, northern Uganda, some 20 years ago or so, had a brutal kind of experience with sort of political violence. There was a guy called Joseph Kone. I don't really feel I should mention his name. Will cut people's mimes, rape young women, and all these kinds of things. His soldiers would do all those very, very terrible things. So when Kone was sort of ebbed and things come down, how do you heal these people? So there was a UN Goodwill ambassador painter, and I hope his name will come back. He went there as a part of a UN to try to draw with these kinds of cases, get them to be able to draw what they went through, or just draw. So that is a part of a healing process, because as you can imagine, it's not just about getting them from these camps or wherever they've been and then putting them in society and then they will flourish. No, it needs a lot of work. His name, the painter, was called Ross Bleckner, as UN Goodwill Ambassador, as a painter. He's not, I think from what I read, someone you're going to hear a lot about, but he's a major painter whose works, talking of arts and the economy, I think sell millions, and is very, very celebrated in those who know who he is. So, and I read about it in the New York Times. I was very impressed, partly because I've been to Uganda, and I don't remember if that before. I think I had been to northern Uganda myself right before he went or after he went. So we tried to exchange notes, and it was really profound to see that they will recognize that you're not just going to go there to build roads or build schools and things like that, but try to get these children to also do artistic things like painting to be part of it. Now, I'm also very interested in landscaping and urban design and architecture and in design and things like that. And I never knew this. I always did it because I like it. And I didn't pay attention. Now I'm trying to say maybe I should pursue this more. But when the COVID pandemic came, I used to just go to parks because I love parks. When I was in New York City, Central Park will be our gathering place, and we'll meet there and play soccer. And you come with a soccer ball. Before you know, some guy from Jamaica, Brazil, Spain, you all come, and people from. And even, I think, ladies, because in many cultures, some people really play soccer very well. But Central Park was this place where I thought it was a great park to just be around in the middle of New York City. But, my love for park has always been there. Well, come COVID. So when COVID came, I started again to go in parks because it was the only place I could not sit in the house all day. In fact, I'm a kind of person, I really like to walk and go somewhere sometimes to work. I can't work 24/7 all week at home. I feel like I need to. So COVID was especially hard on that, especially even in terms of mental health. But what I'll tell you, I've never seen so many people in packs because it allowed us to be separate but together. Okay, and in a way it brought up there was a mental health kind of issue. And when I've started to research it, indeed, trees and greenery and parks really have a lot of mental health benefits, which we don't think about. So for me, I just used to think I like parks. It's like saying you like a certain kind of food, but you don't know the nutrients, the health benefits of eating that food. So when I went and saw these people and I looked at what was happening, I'm like, wow, okay, well, parks are this important. And indeed, it's not just like you go there because they're nice, but they also have some way they can calm us down with anxiety and things like that, and help boost our mental well-being. Yeah.
It's really important form, I think, even if we're talking about painting and drawing, and I love that example you gave, what that artist did in Uganda, because I think it's sometimes you can't always verbalize what's going on in your head. You know, even if we think back to artists like Van Gogh, and it's those who had schizophrenia and bipolar and depression, all of those things. Art can be a really great way for people to express what might be going on in their head if they can't express it by words. So I think it's an important form of therapy.
Yes. So Patrick, just like to thank you very much for the interview today. I know it was really interesting to me, I have to say. Makes me want to get my guitar out straight away for all the benefits that we spoke about. But it's also fascinating your whole idea around observation, and that deep observation, I think, that comes from, using and being part of the art. So I very much appreciate you sharing your insights today. As I said, guys, Patrick's book, The Creative Wealth of Nations, is really, really worth the read for a number of different reasons. I'd definitely check it out either on audiobook in your library or anywhere else you can get it. Patrick, just for myself and Elysia, I really want to say thank you very much. Thank you for taking the time for the interview today, and thank you for sharing your ideas with us.
Oh, thank you so much, Barry, for the invitation. It was great to speak with you and Elysia and all other members of our team, Gilvan and others who may be behind the scenes. Thank you for all you do, and we shall be in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So this is the part of the show where we discuss an artifact of the future, and this might be a concept or a physical item that may exist over time. So Barry, what have you got for us today?
Interesting, aren't you, today, Elysia? VDTs, virtual disposable teams. These are global diverse teams of fully independent experts on various disciplines that form over very short, often micro periods of time to work on a challenge or an opportunity for the hosting organisation. The duration of these engagements can go anywhere from 5 hours or no more than 1 week. Team members are paid by the hour, much like extras on TV or movie set. Teams are formed via the disposable Brain Trust platform, where challenges are posted and teams are selected via rapid automation selection processes. The team bridge the gap for organisations needing high knowledge interventions that enables their internal delivery team to deliver better projects while integrating true deep diversity, I think. So there you go, virtual disposable teams, VDTs.
Amazing thinking. So thank you all for joining us today. If you enjoyed the show, please hit subscribe and head over to your favourite podcast platform to listen to more.
And remember as well, guys, you can join the conversation over at www.futurework.org, where you can download our white papers, join our events and discuss future work topics with other leaders from all around the world. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.